Global leaders digest the fallout from a stormy United Nations General Assembly in New York this week. China has strongly denied accusations from U.S. President Donald Trump that Beijing is trying to interfere in the U.S. midterm elections in November. Meanwhile, the diplomatic tussle has intensified between the United States and other signatories over the future of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal as the U.S. prepares to hit Tehran with fresh sanctions. Henry Ridgwell has a report.
Donald Trump's accusations against China took many at the UN by surprise. In a news conference Wednesday evening, the president was asked what evidence he had to support his claim.
It'll come out. Yeah, I can't tell you now, but it didn't come out of nowhere, that I can tell you.
China strongly denies trying to influence US politics. Some analysts note Trump did not mention Russia.
It would appear that the allegation that Donald Trump made against China when he deliberately not mentioned about Russia really was to distract attention domestically in the United States. So the Chinese are rather upset about it, and I would expect that Putin in Russia is rather pleased about it.
President Trump's accusation, taken alongside the ramping up of trade tariffs, marks a significant escalation of tensions between Washington and Beijing.
The real issue for China is the status, the standing of President Xi and therefore the Communist Party in the country as a whole. President Xi cannot afford and therefore will not agree to, appears to be weak in front of an American onslaught like that.
Chairing a UN Security Council meeting Wednesday, President Trump set his sights firmly on Iran, accusing it of spreading chaos, death and destruction.
Because I think he is trying to appease the allies that he has in the region, the GCC, Saudi Arabia and Israel. And I think that is very important for him because he tried to repatch the bad relations or the tense relations that he had or that the allies had with Obama.
The 5 remaining signatories to the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, Britain, France, Germany, China and Russia, want to create an alternative payment system to bypass US sanctions. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo Thursday reacted with anger.
By sustaining revenues to the regime, you are solidifying Iran's ranking as the #1 state sponsor of terror.
For his part, Iran's president praised efforts to keep the nuclear deal alive.
Until such time when we keep reaping the benefits promised within that agreement for our nation and our people, we will remain in the agreement. Should the situation change, we have other paths and other solutions.
The new sanctions are due to hit in November, and President Trump has pledged that they will be tougher than ever before. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Well, for more on Friday's activities at the UNGA, VOA correspondent Margaret Besheer joins me live from New York. Hi, Margaret.
Hey, Vincent.
Now, what are some of the themes that have been covered by African leaders who have already spoken at the UNGA?
Well, I think we've heard a lot about development and the need for peace and security to be in place so that there can be development and transformation on the continent. We've heard a lot about climate change, battling the effects of climate change. African countries are not big emitters of greenhouse gases which cause global warming, but they suffer the effects of it quite significantly. So there's been a lot of talk about asking for more money to mitigate the effects of climate change. And terrorism has been high on the agenda of a lot of the leaders in their speeches, combating Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Shabaab. So, and then today we heard from South Sudan's Vice President Taban Dengai. He spoke about the peace process there and said the government's committed to comprehensive peace. And he acknowledged skepticism from other countries, saying it would be different this time. He said he's asked why it will be permanent this time. And he said it will be because leaders' attitudes have changed. So we'll see about that.
Beyond that, we know that they also have discussions on the sidelines. Could you mention a few that were significant?
Sure. Well, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, the U.S. Secretary of State, he's just wrapped up some meetings here in New York with the Ethiopian foreign minister and with the South African foreign minister. We don't have readouts yet, but I'm sure on the Ethiopian meeting they're discussing the new peace deal between Ethiopia and Eritrea, a really historic moment. And then there's also very high-level meetings going on certain issues like the Central African Republic. There was a meeting Thursday. 1 million people still displaced, about 600,000 refugees from the CAR, and the UN talked about greater coordination with the African Union, ECOWAS, and the UN, including the Security Council, to sort of get that situation back on track and to restore state authority being the top priority. And there was also a meeting today on Darfur. It's just about to wrap up, but we heard the Deputy Secretary General of the UN, Amina Mohammed. She spoke about security situation really stabilizing in parts of Darfur, except around Jebel Mara. That still seems to be a bit of a hot spot. But she said there's still some grievances that remain unaddressed, such as sharing land and natural resources, the return of displaced persons, the proliferation of weapons. Those need to be addressed. And she said that the gains that have been made have been fragile, and that the international community really needs to support them so that they become more permanent. And she said that a pledging conference is in the works for Darfur so that as the UN draws down there, you have the UN and the AU's hybrid mission, UNAMID. It's in the plans for that 14,000 strong mission to start drawing down. She said they're going to have a pledging conference so that there won't be any gaps and that the UN system will be able to step in.
Excellent reporting as always, Margaret. Thank you very much.
Busy day for Africa.
Very busy. Well, that's VOA's Margaret Besheer reporting live from the United Nations in New York.